You're listening to the Travis Makes Money podcast presented by GoHighLevel.com. For a free 30-day trial of the best all-in-one digital marketing software tool on the planet, just go to GoHighLevel.com/Travis. Hey, what's going on, money makers? Welcome back to the Travis Makes Money podcast, where it's our mission to help you make more money. If you're new to the show, we release brand new conversations with unconventional money makers every single day of the week. So you might be listening to this on another feed or something like that. So if you have not yet, be sure to go over to your podcast app of choice right now, follow the show, subscribe so that you never miss an opportunity to make more money. And while you're there, if you want to leave a quick rating review, I will be eternally grateful to you, as it really does help out the show tremendously. Today on the show, we're going to be talking a little bit about cleaning businesses, which is really cool, with my new friend, Aram Street. Aram, a recent entrant into the world of serial entrepreneurship, transitioned from a career in household management in 2020 to become a business owner. Now self-described as thoroughly unemployable, Aram is the founder and owner of LexClean, a commercial and residential cleaning services company, and the co-founder of CleanSpace, a marketplace platform for on-demand cleaning. I love these conversations because of all the different unique ways of how to get started making extra cash. And for somebody who transitioned from a career in management to moving into full-time entrepreneurship and now blissfully unemployed. So we're going to talk a little bit about how he got started into all of that. Aram, what's up, dude? Welcome to the show.
Travis, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here, and I've enjoyed listening to your podcast up to now. So it's a real honor to be on here on the show. So thanks
Hey,
for
I
having me.
appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. It means that we're
Yeah,
actually putting out some good stuff. If the people on
for
the
sure.
show actually like listening to the show, it means we're doing something right. You know what I mean?
Double whammy. Yeah.
Well, listen, man, I want to get into how you're making money now, but before we do that,
Yeah.
why don't you tell me how you made your first dollar ever?
Okay, so you're talking about as an entrepreneur,
Whatever, whatever.
or just in business.
It
Okay,
could
yeah.
be
My
it could
my
be selling cookies door to door when you were 9.
Gotcha.
Yeah. When do you remember making your first dollar?
That I remember, it was probably just like very uneventful, just doing extra like non regular chores around the house because I found out that my mom would pay me to wash windows that she didn't want to mess with. And I was like, oh, cool. Well, how much can you get? And she was like, I don't know, we'll do $5. I was like, okay, cool. I was, I don't know, 7, 8 years old at the time. And, $5 was not super easy to get a hold of
It's true.
because it couldn't exactly go to work for 40 hours a week. So I was like, just kind of do what he had to do. So that was the first time I remember, yeah, like figuring out how to make some money. And then I was not too long after that, we had a bunch of, this is just kind of a dumb story, but we had a bunch of ornamental grass growing at the side of our house. And twice a year, you got to chop all that grass down to get it to grow back up again. My mom was really into ornamental grass. So she's like, Aaron, I want you to go out there. And we had like a machete or something. She's like, go hack all that ornamental grass down. So I go out there and it's like thick grass, right? Super dry. And I'm like, man, this is going to take 3 days to chop all this down. It's like, there's no way. So I went back into my house. I'm like, Mom, can I just burn it? Like, won't this all just light up? And she comes out, looks at it, like we just had no idea. She's like, yeah, it's probably fine. So I stuffed newspaper that all around. Like it's like maybe 20 feet worth of ornamental, and I stuffed pockets of newspaper all the way down this ornamental grass. I lit the first one, and I never needed to light. I mean, the whole thing went up in about 2 seconds flat. I
That's
mean, just in flames. The crazy thing is it's growing directly beside the house, right? I
yeah.
mean, like it's touching the house, doggone it. And so all of the siding just melts to a crisp. And I'm like, oh, right, the siding. That makes sense. Probably should
Yeah.
have thought. So my first quote unquote job was working all summer long to pay off all the siding. And my dad had I mean, weeks before this, replaced all the soffit at the
Oh
top. So he had
no.
just replaced all the soffit. Of course, the flames went high enough that it just melted all that along with the siding. So I think my first like job sort of thing was mowing lawns all over the place for an entire summer just to pay off this stupid siding. And that was,
That's
yeah,
hilarious.
I don't know. I wasn't that old then either, but it was just the dumb thing. So
I
that
don't
was sort of like
know.
my first forays into making some money.
I don't know, bro. I think you got raked over the coals on that. I think mom should have taken some of that responsibility. You know what I
Dude,
mean?
well, it's so funny because I remember when dad dad came home. And he's just like walking. I was like, couldn't understand what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
And my
Exactly.
mom was amused. She's just like, this is so ridiculous. How are we this dumb to just think this is okay? And she was laughing so hard as she was trying to explain what happened. And he was getting upset because
Yeah.
she thought it was, and like the more upset he got, the more she laughed. And it was a spiral. The whole thing was just a big mess. So it was great.
Oh, that's fantastic, dude. Okay,
Yeah.
so tell me then how you made your most recent dollar.
Oh man, most recent. Let's see what so I'm I'm all over the place these days. So I own a cleaning company that does commercial and residential projects. So most of the bulk of our revenue right now is commercial. We still do full scale residential, but commercial janitorial contracts are kind of our bread and butter. And then I co-founded a software company that is kind of getting off the ground now. So it's sort of in the pre-revenue stage. And then I do sort of the business management side for my wife's gluten-free bakery. So she's a baker
Oh,
and
great.
started in that a couple years ago. So yeah, man, depending on the day of the week, I'm in all sorts of stuff. We did close on a new residential clients a couple days ago, maybe
Okay.
Friday. I think it was Friday last week. So that was probably the most recent newly
There
acquired
you go.
stuff.
Where are you
Yeah,
based, Aram?
Lexington, Kentucky.
There you go.
So
If
we're the
anybody's in
horse
Lexington,
capital of yeah, horse capital of the world. Next to the bourbon capital of the world.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, those are the two things basically that come out of Kentucky.
for sure.
Horses and
Yep.
bourbon. Yeah.
Yep.
So if you're in that area, go check out his wife's bakery. I'm sure he's got some
Yeah.
really great stuff over there.
Yep.
Um, tell me how you first got started with the idea of cleaning. So you were in a management position at another company. Was it
Yeah.
in the same industry or was it something different?
So this is funny because when you talk about household management, a lot of people don't know what that is. Another word you could use, another term is domestic service, private service. So I was actually a butler. We
Oh,
go
okay.
by household managers because butler is too English sounding, and
Yeah.
North Americans we like our American form of, of words.
Yeah. It just makes
So
you think
somewhere
of
along
Jeffrey from um, Fresh
Oh,
Prince of Bel Air.
Fresh Prince of
Yeah.
Bel-Air. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, no, that's basically a lot of what I was doing for the most, like, it's a lot of similar overlap there. But
Okay.
butler is just not a term that Americans like to use much anymore. So they call us household managers, but it's the same thing. Estate management, household management, like a lot of different terms. So I started into that because I sort of tripped into the job, basically coming in as like a glorified housekeeper at the time. It was a 20,000 plus square foot house. So there's this
Wow.
massive 18th century French architecture, just incredible custom built house. I'd never been in a house that big. Yeah, like I said, it was kind of a crazy story how we got in there. But shortly after being there, the owners of the house were like, "Hey, we want you to run everything. We're going to send you this academy, Butler Academy in Toronto." So I went up there, the Charles McPherson Academy for butlers and household managers,
No
and I
way.
became certified, I guess you could say. So I learned all the intricate ins and outs. So yeah, I did that for 8 years, and a lot of it was all encompassing. I mean, it handled a lot of housekeeping management and things like that for sure, but also contractors coming in the house, mechanical operations, a lot of ground stuff. So it was pretty varied. But when I went into entrepreneurship, I started a cleaning company just because I'm a pretty black and white person, and so I look at things more of how is something going to work more so than do I love this or not.
Yeah.
I think there's a great argument, if you want to get passionate about what you do, but I think that preeminently you need it to make money. And
Yeah.
if it also you happen to like to do it, that's great too. But if it doesn't make anything, you're gonna have to find something that does.
Right.
And that was just something I could start and I could market kind of this idea of someone who was a butler. And that was a unique selling proposition in a market that is pretty crowded, right? Like cleaning companies have it's a low barrier to entry market. So they pop up often and all over the place. And so to differentiate yourself with a USP like that was mine was, hey, you know what? I was a butler. I was trained at a prestigious academy and I understand cleaning from a really, really crazy detail, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No
That's
kidding.
kind of how I got into it. Now
What,
I go ahead.
what were you doing before was being a household manager? Was that kind of your first like job?
That was my first. Yeah. So I started that when I was 18.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I turned 19 that year actually.
Was it basically
So
just like, I
yeah,
don't know what I'm doing with my life. I'm not going to college. What do I do here? Let me just get
sort
a
of, yeah.
job.
Yeah, so I started at college. Most of us in my family, most of us were homeschooled, and so we did high school super quick. So we like boiled high school down to 2 years, and most of us started college at 16. So I'm 18. I had a couple of years of college on my belt, and I was right at the point of I didn't have any loans, student loans out at all. I'm studying classical performance with a emphasis on piano.
Hmm.
And right at the point I'm going to have to start taking loans to continue my degree and finish, I'm like, hey, I'm doing the math on this and I'm thinking, I'm not going to make any money with this degree at all,
Yeah.
but I'm going to have to take out some loans. And it didn't make a lot of sense. So I just hung it up. I said, hey, I'm not going to do that. It's funny too, because my family's highly educated. I was the first kid in the family to not finish college. So I have this kind of like inverse like
Yeah.
story. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna finish the degree. And I had a great score. It's like I was a great student, but it just didn't add up for me.
Yeah.
And my family starts freaking
Smart.
out and they're like, oh my gosh, like what's happening? So I wear that label now with some sort of pride because like, yep, I'm the one who doesn't have a degree. I'm okay with that. So, but yeah, I got to Lexington. I moved here from Cincinnati kind of on a whim. And I was working, part-time UPS. Then I got the full-time job as in household management. And yeah, that was what I was doing. I was making some money and I was going to just eventually, I thought I'd work my way up through the ranks and do, better and better paying jobs in that sphere. And then about the 8 year mark, I'd been with that same family for 8 years and I got fired. I knew I was going to get fired for about a full year beforehand. So it was kind of a funny scenario there.
Wow.
And so I knew he was going to let me go. We had some things happen. I was like, he really, really wants to fire me, but he can't find anybody to do my job. So it's going to take him a while.
Yeah.
So in that year leading up to it, I knew I was going to get let go at some point. And that's when we started the cleaning company. So it wasn't completely unexpected, but it kind of helped force me into entrepreneurship because I spent a year applying for these jobs across the US. And when it came down to it, my wife and I talked, I'm like, I don't want to be doing this anymore. Like I'm
Mhm.
ready to be, we'll figure out how to make our own income. So the thing I like about your show, Travis Makes Money, is that is really the essence of entrepreneurship. When you work somewhere 9 to 5, whatever your job is, you're not so much making that money as someone who owns the business is providing you with a paycheck for whatever you've agreed to do for them, right? And there's a mindset shift going from that into entrepreneurship because you literally do have to make the money now. I no longer
Yeah.
was picking up a paycheck on Friday afternoons for
Right.
roughly the same dollar amount and deposit in the bank. I now had to create that. I had to go to the market and say, hey, what can I offer that people will pay me for so
Yeah.
we keep food on the table, right? It's a real shift there. So I emphasize I really relate to kind of what you're talking about here in this podcast format because that's literally what you're doing is you're going from getting money, maybe doing something for someone else, in a job format to actively creating it and materializing it in some way. So
What does being a household manager pay?
the reason I left is because it wasn't paying nearly
Paying
enough. So
enough.
what
Yeah.
happened is, yeah, I was there for about 7 years at the time that I had a compensation conversation. I was like, look, this is all the extra value provided. On the low end of a starting range, it's 70,000. So 70 up to 110 is kind of the base range.
Yeah.
And I was way underneath that. And so my employer at the time got really upset and he's like, oh, I think you're just trying to pull one over on us. It's funny enough because one of the jobs that I interviewed after that conversation was for 115 base with just a ton of perks. And we might have taken that job, which is crazy, except that it was in Cleveland. I was like, man, nobody wants to go to Cleveland. It's like, this guy, I have friends in Cleveland, so I just throw him a hard time. So there's no way I'm going to Cleveland. No, it wasn't. It wasn't just that, but yeah. So you'll generally make in household management on the low end of 6 figures if you're in most places,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you'll get
Nice.
you'll get up north of 200,000 a lot of times because the bulk of that market is in California and New York, with a little bit in DC, a little bit in Florida, but New
Sure.
York and California. So for relative income, you're going to be in the higher hundreds to low
Yeah.
200,000s because of cost of living. So
Yeah. And I assume, like you said, I assume that comes with a lot of perks,
yeah.
food or lodging or,
Oh
a
yeah.
lot of your expenses are taken care of as well by the family and things.
Yep. We lived on a separate house on the property for several years, depending on what the family does and how often they travel. A lot
Yeah.
of colleagues that flew in private jets all over the place. There was one guy who he had a different title, but his job is he worked for a really interesting situation. His job was basically to fly and spend days in 5 and 7 star resorts and basically review them to see if they were good enough for the family
Now
So
that's a
year
gig.
round, he
Yeah.
was just, testing it out to see if it was okay.
That's a
So yeah,
hustle
you
right
could
there, bro.
you could
Yeah.
do some wild stuff for sure. Yeah.
That's a solid hustle. Yeah. But
Yep.
where's the schooling for that one? Yeah. I want to, I want to learn
Yeah,
more about how to
yeah,
go
there
do that.
it is. It's crazy. And like the thing that I tell people is the perks are really crazy. Like they're
Yeah.
some of the most unique perks you'll get. At the end of the day, though, you don't own any of that.
Right.
That's not your Gulf Stream that you're
Yep.
flying on. It's in a lot of
Right.
cases may not be the house that that you own, that you're living in. A lot of different things that are really, really cool. But if you're still signing somebody said once, I'm going to sign the front of the checks, not the back of the checks. As long as you're
Yeah.
signing the back of the check, none of that belongs to you. And
Right.
if you don't control it, you don't own it.
Yeah,
So,
that's right. That's right. So when you started making this transition, did you start making money in cleaning before you were actually fired from this, or did you get fired and then you're like, all right, let's go?
yeah, I was fired. I had 1 month of severance. So it's basically
Okay.
like, hey, you'll be on the payroll for 1 more month and then you're on your own.
Yeah.
So I had a month to kind of get things together and hit the ground running. So I was working. I was actively starting to develop, like actually billing customers inside that first month for sure.
Okay. Got it.
We didn't waste any time. We had 4 kids at the time. We have 5 now. And so I wasn't necessarily sitting on mounds and mounds of cash. It was like, oh, I'll take 12 months off and we'll
Yeah.
formulate a plan. Figure it out. I was like, nope, we're going to get to work. So we did
So
pretty quickly.
practically, man, tell me the first steps. So for somebody
Yeah.
listening that's like, that sounds cool, but like, what did you do to go
Yeah.
from I'm not making any money to now I have enough income here to provide for my family of 5, 6?
Yeah. So I'm sure you've heard this many times before with people you've talked to in your podcast, but your network is everything. And if you are not, I tell people all the time, even if you're not in entrepreneurship right now, but you think you might be at some point down the road, you need to have a well-developed network. You've got to be hustling on that front and even going to events that are entrepreneurially focused, even if it's not something you're doing at the moment, you need to be developing a network that says, hey, these are people that know me, they know what I'm good at, they know where my skill set is, and I'm also providing value to them by connecting them with people in my network. Because when I started this company, my first customer base they were all people that I knew. It was like,
Right.
hey, these were people that I worked, the builder of the house that I had worked in. He was, designing really, really large homes across Kentucky. And I was like, hey, Greg, I'm starting this. Boom. Love to be your go-to man here. But all of my early customers out of the gate were just people that I already knew and I had built a good relationship with.
Hmm.
So that's, those are the easiest customers you're going to get. There's no marketing spend in that. So if you don't have, or you have an underdeveloped network, you're just letting a lot of money, just go right out of the chute. So
Yeah.
it's very, very important. Like from a very practical, simple perspective, be developing your network early. Even if you think you're 5, 10 years down the road from starting something, your network will start paying you in a lot of cases on day one. So you want to have that ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're first getting started, leads come from anywhere. Like,
Yep.
and the first thing you're going to do is just hit up warm network. Even if you're
Yep.
just letting them know this is what you're doing. You don't have to do this whole like, oh, the first time I heard from my friend from high school, he's pitching me on a product he's selling. It's like, well, you don't have to go
For sure.
pitch all these people. Just let them know, like, hey, I'm starting
Yep.
this commercial cleaning business. It would mean the world to me if you had anybody that was looking for something like this, that a quick introduction would go a long way. I appreciate it. Let me know
Absolutely.
if there's anything I can do for you, whatever. Like just letting people know that this is something that you're doing. And then, a trick I always do is ask people for advice.
Yeah.
Like hit up a bunch of
Absolutely.
people in my
That's
warm
great.
network and just be like, hey, here's what I'm doing. Here's what I got going on. You got any advice for me? And it's just
100%.
it's a great way just to throw it out there to make people aware that this is now a solution, or this is now a problem that you have built a solution for. And
Yeah.
some of those people inevitably will have the very problem that you're talking about and could potentially become those first customers. Now, you
Certainly.
can't text these people with the expectation that they're going to be your first customers, because then you start
Yep.
this like, unwritten social contract that's going to make you damage relationships. It's not about that. It's just about genuinely asking people for real advice, whose advice you care to get. And then while also making them aware that this is something that you're now doing. If nobody knows what you're doing, how do you expect anybody to pay you to do the thing? You know what I mean? You got to make people aware that this is something that you're doing. And then sometimes those people will actually become your first customers, or they might have just had a conversation with somebody about the fact that they needed to hire cleaners for this commercial project, and now they have somebody to send to them. You know what I mean? So I love that, dude, because sometimes we get so in our heads, and so the
Yeah.
people are like, oh, I don't want to start the business because like I don't know anything about running Google ads. I don't know anything about running
Right.
Facebook ads, and I have to learn
Right.
marketing, and I have to learn sales, and I have to learn all these other things. It's like sometimes you don't have to learn all those things right now. You just
Yeah.
got to get to your first few customers. And sometimes that can come from just like sending some text messages out to some people that you already know.
Absolutely. That's solid. Solid. I love that, Travis. It comes back to a lot of there's a really, really great book that I read a couple of years ago called Never Eat Alone by
Hmm.
Keith Ferrazzi.
Yeah.
And I recommend that to people all the time. And he talks about using networking as a sort of a symbiotic thing where you're giving back to people as well, and you're not ever establishing a network for the sole purpose of a transactional thing, but it's like,
Correct.
hey, I want to connect with you because I already know people that you could connect to in my network that would be beneficial to you, and you're sort of doing that value driven approach first, and then
Preemptively.
if on the back end 6-12 months down the road that person could connect you with something that you're looking for, then when you reach out to them, you've already given them value first. That was your intention, rather than just going somewhere, throwing a ton of business, cards out and just grabbing a bunch of people's numbers. You're actively building a relationship and providing value before a request. And that is just massively, massively helpful. So
You have to dig the well before you're thirsty. This is
100%.
this is
Yeah.
why this is why it seems like you're annoying people when you're reaching out to them
Yeah.
because they haven't heard from you in 12 years. But if you're
Sure.
just like that's why I constantly, man, like always, like if I have a free moment and I'm traveling or I have a few minutes at my desk or I'm going for a walk, a lot of times it's when I'm walking because when I walk, I try not to just like listen to stuff when I walk. I try to let my mind wander and have some time to myself and ideate things and stuff
Yep.
like that. But a lot of times when I go for a walk, this is when I'll just send videos to people who I haven't talked to in a really long time. I just pull out my phone, go to my messages, and I start scrolling down to the people that I haven't talked to in 3 years. And then I
Okay.
stop around, it's 2025 now. I stop around 2022, 2021 and start looking at names and being like, oh, I wonder how they're doing. And I'll just send them a
Yeah.
quick video, just be like, hey, thinking about you. Hope you're doing well. You still working
It's
on this other
awesome.
project? Let me know if there's anything I can do for you. Send them a quick message. And you
It's
do
awesome.
that constantly all the time and you stay on top of that. Like I said, in 6 months, when you have a real ask, like, oh, I got this book
Mhm.
coming out, or I'm starting this podcast, or I got this new business that I'm launching. When you reach back out to these people to be like, hey, can I get your advice on this? It's just like they're
Yep.
used to hearing from you every once in a while. They're used to you checking in. You have a
Yep.
relationship there. It's not just like, oh, whenever Travis reaches out, it's because he wants something. What does he want this time? You know what I mean? It's
For
like,
sure.
no, they're just reaching out because they want to stay in touch. And sometimes it might just be to reach out to say hello. Sometimes it might be to reach out to ask them if it's okay if I make an introduction for them to somebody I just met because there could be
Mhm.
some potential synergy here. Just like
Yep.
you have to constantly keep a good tab on the relationships that you have and realize that like you have no idea how these things are going to come back in your life at some point, but the game is people.
Yeah.
Like the game is not numbers, the game is not money, the game is people. We're all in whatever business you're in, man. You are in the people business. So you have to get good at managing the people in your life, and you got to be willing to dig that well before you're thirsty, because someday you're going to be thirsty.
Absolutely. It's good stuff.
What did you do?
Good
What did
stuff.
you do? Step two. So you get a few customers in the door. How do you like
Yep.
actually build a sustainable business that continues to provide for your family? Now we're 5 years after you started this thing,
Yep.
and it's going really well. What like, and you had 3 or 4 other businesses now. How do you like move into the next step? Because you were never an entrepreneur before.
Right. So for me, the key was scaling in a way that was profitable, like I said, out of the gate. So I was servicing customers early on. And so that meant we started as a residential cleaning company. And a year and a half later, we grew into the commercial side.
Okay.
So you don't have to follow that approach. But again, if you're coming from my standpoint, which is I don't have a ton of cash in the bank to experiment or to try things or to develop this, over a longer term, then you have to actually bring more money in more quickly. So for me, that was residential. Residential customers are you're going to bill them, they're going to pay you the day up, right? Like that's kind of the expectation there. Obviously, when you get into the commercial front, you're going to need, there's a different cash flow situation going on there because you may bill customers with net 30, net 60, sometimes net 90-day terms. And so that's a little different than cleaning a house and getting paid the day of when you've cleaned a facility and you've got an employee payroll you've got to run for the next 6 to 8 weeks before you get paid on that invoice.
Yeah.
Different dynamics, right? So people that are interested in the cleaning business, like, look, commercial definitely pays more, but you're just different cash flow considerations, different expenses at that level as well, right? You're going to have different potentially certifications depending on your state, depending on what you offer. There are all sorts of different things happening there. Insurance prices are going to be different.
Yeah.
So for
Licensing
me,
requirements.
yeah, all of that changes. So for me, it's like, look, just build this out in a way where we can keep the money coming in at a profitable level and scale as we can kind of notch it up gradually over time.
Yeah.
Interestingly, in my case, some of the best things, and actually even our commercial, going from residential to commercial, happened because my buddy was a continuous improvement leader at a Kroger dairy plant in Winchester. And he calls me. He's like, "Hey, our cleaning company is on their way out. Wants you to come give a quote." And I'm like, "Oh man, we don't do commercial cleaning," because at that point we'd done like retail commercial jobs here and there, and they weren't very profitable. I was like, no, I turned them down. He kept bugging me about it, and he's like, "No, dude, I'm going to send you the list of what gets done, on a weekly basis. Just give me a ballpark figure, right?" He
Yeah.
kept bothering me. So finally, because he emailed this to me, I took a look. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna, probably hire 2 people for this shift, yada yada. I'm running all the numbers, and then I threw just a stupid number on top of it just to get him off my back, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, this is our range. He's like, great, yep, that's in our ballpark. I was like, heck, okay, cool. So if he hadn't like really stuck on to me, we might not be in that industry right now,
Yeah.
just because of things that I thought based on a limited level of experience that I had in some other places. And so it was there that I learned, that was our first commercial contract. And it was there that I learned you can't make a ton of assumptions about the market as a whole, and your
Yeah.
individual experiences in segments of the market won't, engender the entire landscape.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first times I realized, it's like, man, most of our revenue today is coming from this segment of the market that I was turning down because I thought it looked like this one or two experiences that I had over here.
Sure.
So that's kind of interesting, because you talked to early on when you started. You said that when you start a business, you're just looking for leads anywhere, right? And what we tend to do starting a business is we'll do anything that anybody asks us at any point, and the numbers may be way off, and might not make sense for us to do it. But as you go on, you want to develop a bit more of a funnel, right? Where it's like, hey, I don't want to do anything all the time for anybody. I need to
Correct.
actually offer a niche.
Correct.
But in some cases, you can overcorrect, and your niche can be built on a lot of misunderstanding, that just bad knowledge you have about a market. And so that
Yeah.
was my case there. So I was really thankful that Anthony kept on to me,
But
because that changed for a lot of
but
things
that's
for
the
us. So
correct way to do it though. Like at first you say yes to
yeah,
everything. Like you have to say yes until your calendar's full, is what I tell
yeah,
people. Is like you
right,
you like you don't create there's this great show called Parks and Rec.
yeah,
And in that show, Tom, who's played by Aziz Ansari, they start this company that basically does nothing, and they have no cash flow, and they don't really have a product or whatever. And he tells Leslie after it goes bankrupt in like 6 weeks that that they had a couple people that want to do business with them, but they told them that they wouldn't do business with them because they were too booked or something. So they turned
yeah,
down the only like 3 customers that actually wanted to work with them because they were trying to create scarcity, because they heard that's what
right,
they had to do or whatever. And it's like, yeah, that's the problem, is people think that that's what they have to do. But like, you don't create scarcity
right,
by just throwing it out into thin air. You create
sure,
scarcity by actually having scarcity, by
right,
engineering scarcity. And the way that you
yeah,
engineer scarcity is by saying yes to everything at first. You pack your calendar with as many things you possibly can. And then
yep,
you get to the point where you're like, I literally physically cannot do this more. We can't,
right,
we have to say no to these projects. But when you
yep,
start being able to say no, that's when you can do exactly what you did, which is when
yeah,
your calendar was too full, you were focused on this niche, you were saying no, which is the correct thing to do. We're focusing on this area, we're saying no to everything else. That's correct.
hmm,
But then eventually you have the ability to then negotiate, not from a position of desperation, but
right,
from a position of abundance, where people want you to do the job because you actually do good work. So then you're able
yep,
to respond and be like, okay, fine, get off my back, this is what we'll do it for, here's a crazy number. If you
sure,
like, and you pay me anything less than that, it doesn't make sense for me. But if you pay me
Yep.
this crazy amount, then I guess I'll do it. And then they go,
I'm
yes,
interested.
let's do it. And you go, wait, what? You said yes to that? Like now all of a sudden you can focus on this. And now when these residential people are coming up to you and being like, hey, can we work with you? You're like, actually, no, we got this
Right.
big commercial contract. We don't have enough time to be able to
Right.
do that. Now you can start increasing your prices based on the actual scarcity that's involved inside of the business,
Yep.
not from these like fake scarcity BS metrics that people try to throw
Right.
out there to make themselves seem more important than they are. So you did it the correct way, dude. Like that is absolutely that's the model. That's the blueprint is you say yes to everything until your calendar's full. And then you start saying no to things and only saying yes to the things that are within your focus. And then you're able to expand from there.
Sure.
Once you're in a position of the powerful part of the negotiation, then you can start doing business the way that you want to do it and only working with people who really want to work with you and building a good book of business that way. So I
Yeah.
love the service-based businesses, man, because you can start it now. You
Yeah.
can start it as a side hustle and you can keep it as a side hustle forever
Yep.
if you want to. You never
Absolutely.
have to turn it into a multi-million-dollar enterprise with dozens of employees and overhead and office space. You don't have to do any of that. You can start it on the side and you can keep it on the side if you want. But
Yep.
if you enjoy it and you're competent and you're getting better at it and the prices are getting better and the profits getting better, then at some point it doesn't make sense for you to stay at your full-time thing anymore and you can transition to this thing full-time.
Absolutely.
Like you said, the nice thing about some of those things is like the barrier to entry is really, really low. So anybody can
Absolutely.
just jump in and get started and then dabble. Maybe you take on a few clients and you go like, I hate the cleaning business. Okay, great.
Yep.
No worries.
Yep.
Then tell them you're hanging it up and start a landscaping business, whatever. It's just
Yeah.
like do something on the side that's going to bring in some more cash that has the ability to pay you a lot of money if you're to focus on it a lot more later on.
And those low barrier to entries you talked about doing these things on the side that's so important too. And the reason why cleaning I think works so I think the reason why so many cleaning companies pop up is because people who are paying for house cleaning ideally would like people in there that they know,
Mm,
right? If everything was like fair and equal. So you got the
sure.
big chains, the franchises for sure, but it's not really that impossible to steal clients away from even a franchise because they're not sending the same crew in a lot of times. And
Yep.
if you talk to a client and like, hey, I can get the same two people in, or it's just me starting out, right? Like I'll clean your house every other week.
Yeah.
And that person, they're going to be, even if it's a little bit more expensive, they're going to feel so much better having you in there than this rotating crew of random
Absolutely.
people. So that you can really start off pretty easily and scale up from there in an easy way. So,
Love the conversation, Aram. Let's move into the last
yep,
segment here. Just some quick random questions, quick random answers. You
love
ready?
it. Let's do it.
What profession other than your own do you think that it would have been fun to master?
Um, probably skydiving instructor.
If you
Yep.
could sit on a park bench with someone, past or present, and chat for an hour, who would it be?
Gosh, that's a huge list. Teddy Roosevelt comes to mind pretty easily just because he was such an interesting character from so many angles and he has just so many
Savage.
wild stories. So probably
Savage.
him.
How do you like to learn best? Books, blogs, audiobooks, podcasts, YouTube videos?
Audiobooks, number one spot. So on 2x speed. Yep.
What's a good audiobook you'd recommend?
Well, Keith Frost, he's a good one to start with. Never Eat Alone, like I mentioned earlier. And then Rejection Proof by Jia Jiang is one I'm going back through for about the third time right now. Really phenomenal book on how to build your resiliency for rejection.
What is your go-to pump-up song, Aaron?
Pump up song. There's a group called Baker Mats that does a lot of like EDM sort of stuff, but they always feature saxophones
Hmm.
in their music. They always get those like saxophone riffs, and that's just some good, hard hitting, like good stuff. So yeah, Baker Mat.
What is something you are not very good at?
I'm not a creative, so which is weird for the entrepreneurial space. I'm a really, really logic systems guy, and I don't draw, I don't do anything like that. So I'm not good at coming up and creating an idea. I just want to see an idea that's worked, and then I duplicate it. So if you ask me like, Aram, create X, wrong person to ask. I'm gonna go find a creative,
Go to
have them draw that
ChatGPT
up.
for that. Yeah.
100%. Yep.
As we get everything wrapped up here, my man, where can people go to get more from you?
Yeah, LinkedIn. That's where I love to stay connected to people. So yeah, easy to find. Aram Street. There aren't that many of us on LinkedIn. None of us other than me from Lexington. So yeah, if you put those filters in, I'll pop right up.
Sweet. Look up Aram Street from Lexington over on LinkedIn. That's Aram, Aram Street over on LinkedIn. Dude, thanks so much for doing this, man. I thought this was a great conversation. I appreciate you for coming on, taking the time to share the knowledge with the people. Everybody else, listen and tuning in. Remember that money only solves your money problems, but it's a little bit easier to solve the rest of your problems if you got some money in the bank. So let's solve that problem first here on the Travis Makes Money podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you next time. Peace out.